The great chamber of the Galactic Council was the most beautiful place in the known universe. Its walls were made of living crystal that sang soft music when light touched them. 12 massive chairs formed a circle, each one built for a different alien species. For 3,000 years, this room had been the heart of galactic peace. Ambassador stood in the center of that circle, and she was begging. She was 42 years old, with dark hair that was just starting to show gray at the temples. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook as she held up images of burning cities and dying children. Behind her, a holographic display showed humanity's colony worlds, one after another being torn apart by the swarm. "Please," she said, "we are asking for the help you promised us. The Mutual Defense Compact was signed by all of us. When one member is attacked, all members respond. This is the agreement. This is what we all swore to do." There were insects. Not small insects like the ones on Earth, but massive creatures the size of horses, with razor-sharp limbs and acid that could melt through steel. They traveled in swarms of billions, moving from world to world, eating everything and everyone in their path. They had no diplomats. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed. 3 months ago, they had arrived at humanity's outer colonies. Showed the council footage from New Shanghai, a beautiful world of green forests and blue oceans where 15 million humans had built their homes. They had landed like a black rain, covering the planet's surface within hours. The video showed families running, soldiers fighting, children screaming. It showed the eating people alive. New Shanghai fell in 6 days, said. Hope lasted 4. Mars Prime is under siege right now. Earth itself has begun evacuation procedures. She looked around the circle at the 12 alien species, who were supposed to be humanity's allies. There were ancient beings made of something like smoke and shadow. They had been traveling between stars when humans still lived in caves. The High Speaker floated in his chair, his form constantly shifting and changing. "The compact requires us to consider all factors," the High Speaker said. His voice was like wind through dead leaves. "The swarm is significant. Engaging them would cost us greatly." "People are dying," his voice broke for the first time. "Children are dying right now while we stand here talking." The crystalline hegemony representative was a being of living glass, beautiful and cold. Light moved through her body like frozen lightning. "We have our own borders to protect," she said. "If the finish with humanity, they may come for us next. We must save our forces." "If you helped us now, together we could stop them," said. "That is the entire point of the compact. That is why we joined. We gave you our technology. We sent our soldiers to help you in your wars. We did everything you asked." The methane lords of breathed poison and lived in sealed suits when they left there. Their ambassador made a sound that the translator turned into a sigh. "Logistics make assistance impossible. Our fleets are positioned for other purposes. Moving them would take too long." Felt her heart breaking. She had spent 10 years building relationships with these species. She had attended their ceremonies, learned their languages, celebrated their holidays. She had truly believed, that humanity had found its place among the stars. "We are going to vote," the High Speaker announced. "All those in favor of sending military assistance to humanity under the terms of the Mutual Defense Compact, signal now." Watch the 12 representatives. One by one they remained still. No one moved, no one signaled. All those opposed or abstaining. 12 signals of abstention. 12 species deciding that humanity was not worth saving. The High Speaker's form rippled in what might have been amusement. "The motion fails. The Council will not be providing military assistance at this time. We wish humanity well in its difficulties." Stood frozen. Around her, the representatives began to leave, already talking among themselves about other matters, trade agreements, border disputes, the small politics of empire. 17 billion human lives had just been abandoned, and they were already moving on. She walked back to her ship in silence. Her aide, a young man named Thomas, was crying openly. Did not cry. Something inside her had gone cold and hard, like iron cooling in ice water. The next 8 months were hell. Without help from the Council, humanity fought alone. They threw everything they had at every ship, every weapon, every soldier. Young men and women who had never held a gun learned to fight. Old people who should have been enjoying peaceful retirements died holding defensive lines so others could escape. Lost her left arm pulling a family from the ruins of a collapsed building on what was left of New Shanghai. She refused to stop working even as doctors attached a basic prosthetic. There was too much to do, too many people still dying. In the end, humanity survived. Barely. The having stripped a dozen colony worlds completely bare moved on to find new feeding grounds. Perhaps they would return someday, perhaps not. It did not matter. The damage was done. 17 billion dead, 12 worlds destroyed. The survivors gathered on Earth and the few colonies that remained, and they counted their losses. 6 months after the finally left, returned to the Galactic Council chamber. She walked slowly now, still healing from wounds that would never fully close. Her hair had gone completely white. Her eyes held something that had not been there before, something that made the alien representatives uncomfortable when they looked at her. She stood in the center of the circle one more time. "I come to announce that humanity is withdrawing from the Galactic Council," she said. Her voice was calm and flat. "We are closing our borders. We are ending all trade agreements, all diplomatic relations, all contact with Council species." The High Speaker made a dismissive gesture. "If that is what you wish, your departure will be noted in the records." "I am sure it will," turned to leave, then stopped. She looked back at the 12 representatives, meeting each of their eyes in turn. "You will regret this," she said, not angry, not threatening. Just stating a simple fact like saying the sky was blue or water was wet. The crystalline hegemony representative made a sound like breaking glass. Laughter. "Regret. You are a young species, barely out of your cradle. In 1,000 years, no one will remember your name." Smiled, it was not a pleasant smile. "We will remember," she said. "We will remember every name, every death, every child who never grew up, and one day you will understand what that means." She walked out of the chamber. The great doors closed behind her. The Galactic Council returned to its business. Humanity was, after all, inconsequential. They were so very wrong. The first year after humanity closed its borders, the Galactic Council sent 17 diplomatic ships to make contact. None of them returned. There was no battle, no distress signals, no debris floating in space. The ships simply crossed into human territory and vanished, as if the universe itself had swallowed them whole. Scanning equipment showed nothing. Long-range sensors detected nothing. It was as if human space had become a black hole that consumed everything that entered. The Council was annoyed but not worried. Humanity was a young species, angry and hurt. They would calm down eventually. They would realize they needed galactic trade to survive. They would come crawling back, begging to rejoin the community of civilized species. 5 years passed, then 10, then 20. The silence continued. During those years, the galaxy had its own problems. The having tasted easy prey began raiding the territories of other species. The methane lords lost 3 colony worlds before they managed to push the swarm back. The crystalline hegemony built massive defensive stations around their home systems, spending fortunes they could not really afford. War broke out between the Trade Federation and the Concordat over mining rights in a distant star system. Thousands of ships clashed in battles that lasted for months. Old alliances broke apart. New enemies emerged. The great peace that the Council had maintained for centuries began to crack and splinter. And still, humanity said nothing. Occasionally, someone would remember the humans and wonder what had happened to them. The common theory was civil war. A species that had lost so much, that had been so traumatized, would naturally turn on itself. Humans were probably fighting each other now, destroying what little they had left in pointless conflicts over food and resources. "They were always violent," the High Speaker said at one council meeting. "It was their nature. Without external enemies, they are simply killing each other. In another generation, there will be nothing left." Some younger council members suggested sending reconnaissance missions. Not diplomatic ships, but small, fast probes designed to observe without being detected. The elder species refused. "Why waste resources on ghosts?" the crystalline hegemony asked. "Let them die in peace. We have more important matters to address." 50 years after humanity closed its borders, almost no one in the galaxy thought about them anymore. They had become a footnote in history books, a brief entry that students might read and quickly forget. A young species that had reached too far, fallen too hard, and disappeared into the darkness of their own making. Behind the sealed borders, something very different was happening. The first 10 years were the hardest. Humanity had lost so much, not just people, but knowledge, infrastructure, hope. Many did want to give up, to surrender to despair and let their species fade away. But others remembered the promise had made in the council chamber. They remembered the cold smile on her face when she said those words. "We will remember." Humanity did not forget. They could not forget. Every survivor carried the weight of those 17 billion dead, and that weight became the foundation for everything that followed. Scientists who had worked with alien technology began taking it apart, piece by piece, learning its secrets. Engineers who had studied under council masters now had decades of free time and burning motivation. They improved on alien designs. They found weaknesses. They invented entirely new approaches that the older species had never considered. The Galactic Council had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. They had settled into comfortable patterns, doing things the way they had always been done because it worked well enough. They had stopped truly innovating long ago. Humanity had no such limitations. They had nothing to lose and everything to prove. 20 years after closing the borders, human ships could travel twice as fast as any council vessel. 30 years in, they had developed weapons that made council technology look like children's toys. 40 years in, they had quietly mapped every star system in the galaxy, learned every trade route, identified every strategic weakness in every species' defenses. They did this in complete silence. No communications left human space. No signals betrayed their activities. The galaxy saw only darkness and assumed death. Lived through all of it. Advanced medical technology developed in those same secret labs kept her alive and relatively healthy. She was over 100 years old now, but her mind was still sharp, and her memory was still perfect. She remembered every name on the list of the dead, every single name. Once a year, she broadcast that list across human space. It took 72 hours to read all 17 billion names. Every human stopped what they were doing and listened. Children who had been born after the massacre learned the names of those who had died before they existed. Old survivors wept for friends and family they had lost. And everyone, young and old, renewed their promise. They would not forget. They would not forgive. One day, when they were ready, they would return. The council species went about their lives, never knowing that a storm was building just beyond their sight. They fought their small wars and made their small peace treaties. They traded and argued and celebrated, believing themselves the masters of the galaxy. They had no idea that humanity was watching. Human observers had infiltrated every major council species years ago. Some were spies in the traditional sense, disguised and hidden. Others were simply listening posts, tiny devices scattered across the galaxy, collecting information and sending it home through channels the council could not detect. Humanity knew about the war between thee and the before either side announced it publicly. They knew about the crystalline hegemony's financial problems. They knew about the methane lords' failing atmospheric systems. They knew about every secret deal, every hidden weakness, every lie the council species told each other. And they planned. In the 50th year of silence, stood before a gathering of human leaders. She was old now, kept alive by machines, but her voice was still strong. "We are ready," she said. "We have become what they forced us to become. Tomorrow we return to the galaxy. Tomorrow they learn what their betrayal has cost them." The room was silent. Then slowly they began to speak, not cheers or war cries, something quieter, something more terrifying. They spoke the names, all 17 billion of them. And when they finished, they looked at their ancient ambassador with cold eyes full of patient fury. "For the dead," said. "For the dead," humanity answered. The silence was about to end. They had grown comfortable in their power. For 50 years, they had raided and consumed, taking what they wanted from species too weak to stop them. Their home world, Prime, held 40 billion of the insect creatures, living in massive hive cities that stretched across continents. One morning, they were simply gone. A trading vessel was the first to notice. It had come to pay tribute to the hopping to buy safety for another year, but when it arrived, the planet was silent. No signals, no movement, no response to any communication. The captain sent a shuttle down to investigate. What he found made no sense. The cities stood empty but undamaged. Food still sat on tables half-eaten. Vehicles waited in streets with their engines cold. In the nurseries, eggs lay unhatched and abandoned. 40 billion had vanished in a single night without any sign of struggle, without any trace of where they had gone. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The most feared predator species in known space had simply disappeared. No one could explain it. No one could understand how it was possible. Before anyone could investigate further, everything fell apart. The Methane Lord's primary shipyard was the largest construction facility in 3 sectors. It could build 100 warships at once and had been operating for over 1,000 years. In a single hour, it was reduced to floating debris. The weapons that destroyed it left energy signatures that no Council scientist could identify. The crystalline hegemony received word that unknown vessels had surrounded their breeding worlds. These worlds were the most sacred places in hegemony space, where new crystalline beings were grown in special caves over centuries. The unknown vessels did not attack. They simply sat there, weapons powered, waiting. Trade routes found themselves blocked by ships of unfamiliar design. Not just one route, but all of them. Simultaneously. Every major junction, every supply line, every path that connected to their economic empire had a vessel sitting in it, doing nothing but existing. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives rushed to Nexus Prime, their translators working overtime as they shouted over each other. Fear filled the great chamber. Who was doing this? How were they doing it? What did they want? Then every screen in the galaxy lit up with the same image. A human woman, old, with white hair and a silver prosthetic arm that gleamed in the light. Her face was lined with age, but her eyes were sharp and cold. Behind her stood the bridge of a ship larger than anything the Council had ever built. Every being in the galaxy who had access to a screen saw her. Every translator rendered her words in every language. "My name is," she said. "Some of you may remember me. 50 years ago, I stood in the Council chamber and begged for help. My people were dying, 17 billion of them, and you did nothing." Her voice was calm. There was no anger in it, no emotion at all. That made it worse. "You taught us a valuable lesson that day. You taught us that mercy is weakness, that trust is foolishness, that the only thing this galaxy respects is power." The image shifted to show a fleet. Thousands of ships, each one more advanced than anything the Council possessed. They stretched across the like stars in the sky. "We learned our lesson well. We spent 50 years becoming something you should have feared, something you should have helped when helping would have cost you nothing." Smiled, and it was the coldest expression any being in the galaxy had ever seen. "They are not dead. We are not monsters. We simply relocated them to a planet of our choosing, stripped them of all technology, and left them to survive as best they can. They will remember what happens to those who harm humanity. They will have a very long time to remember." She leaned forward slightly. "Now it is your turn. Now you will learn what we learned. What it feels like to call for help and receive only silence. What it feels like to watch everything you love burn while others look away." The transmission showed more images. Human ships appearing at strategic points throughout the galaxy. Human soldiers in armor that shrugged off Council weapons. Human technology that made the most advanced Council systems look like children's toys. "We know everything about you," continued. "Every secret, every weakness, every lie you have told each other. We have been watching you for decades, and you never even noticed. That is how little you paid attention to the species you threw away." In the Council chamber, the representatives stared at the screens in horror. The High Speaker, the same one who had laughed at 50 years ago, tried to signal for order. No one paid attention. "You thought we were dead," said. "You hoped we were dead. It would have been more convenient for you. But we did not die. We survived. We grew strong. And now we have returned." She stood straight, her silver arm catching the light. "We do not want to destroy you. Destruction would be too quick, too easy. We want you to understand. We want you to feel what we felt. And when you finally understand, when you finally know what your betrayal truly cost you, then we will talk about the future. Until then, we suggest you do not resist. We would hate for there to be consequences." The transmission ended. For a long moment, silence filled the Council chamber. Then chaos erupted. Representatives screamed at each other. Some tried to flee. Others demanded immediate military response. But they all knew the truth. They could see it in each other's eyes. Humanity had returned, and there was nothing they could do to stop what was coming. The reckoning had begun. The crystalline hegemony's ruling council consisted of 12 ancient beings, each 1,000s of years old. They had ruled their species since before humans had discovered fire. They believed themselves eternal, unchangeable. beyond the reach of any threat. On the first day of humanity's return, they stopped moving. No one understood what happened at first. The 12 rulers simply froze in the middle of their deliberations. Their crystalline bodies still glowed with inner light, still hummed with life energy, but they could not move. They could not speak. They could not do anything but watch through eyes that had become prisons. Human scientists had spent decades studying crystalline biology. They had learned that consciousness in these beings was maintained by specific frequency patterns in their crystal matrices. A carefully designed signal could disrupt those patterns without killing the creature. It could trap the mind inside a body that refused to obey. The 12 rulers remained frozen for exactly 847 hours. The same amount of time that the siege of New Taipei had lasted, when crystalline hegemony ships could have broken through the lines but chose to stay away. When the signal finally stopped and the rulers could move again, they found their subordinates had been making plans. Recordings had been leaked showing lower officials discussing whether to simply grow new rulers instead of waiting for the frozen ones to recover. Trust that had existed for shattered in days. The crystalline hegemony did not collapse, but it cracked, and everyone knew that humanity could freeze them again any time they chose. The methane lords faced a different punishment. Their species breathed gases that were poison to most other life forms. They had built their civilization inside sealed domes on worlds with atmospheres too toxic for anyone else. Those domes required constant maintenance, and the atmospheric processors were the most important systems they possessed. Human engineers had created a bacteria, a tiny organism, invisible to the eye, that survived in the methane lord's atmosphere and slowly ate the filters in their processors. Not fast enough to cause immediate death, just fast enough to be terrifying. Within weeks, every methane lord dome began showing warning signs. Filters were failing faster than they could be replaced. The poison levels inside their safe spaces were slowly rising. If nothing changed, their entire species would suffocate within a few years. Then human ships arrived with new filters. Better filters, filters that worked perfectly and would last for decades. They offered these filters freely with no payment required. The only condition was that the methane lords accept them. The message was clear. Humanity could save them or watch them die. Their survival now depended on human goodwill. The methane lords accepted the filters. The Trade Federation had built their power on secrets. They knew things about every species, every government, every corporation. They used that knowledge to manipulate markets, control resources, and make themselves essential to galactic commerce. Humanity did not attack them with weapons. They attacked them with information. Every secret they had ever collected, humanity released to the galaxy. Private communications between politicians, hidden financial records, blackmail material that had been used to control thousands of powerful individuals. All of it dumped into public networks for anyone to see. The economy, built on the power of knowing what others wanted hidden, collapsed within days. Former allies turned into enemies. Former partners demanded revenge. The species that had made itself rich by trading in secrets suddenly found that they had no secrets left to trade. And through it all, humanity did not fire a single shot. Other species faced their own punishments. Some lost critical supply lines. Others found their defensive systems mysteriously malfunctioning. A few discovered that their most trusted leaders had been receiving bribes from human agents for decades, their loyalty already bought and paid for. The Concordat, oldest and proudest of the Council species, tried to fight back. They gathered their fleets, their most advanced weapons, their greatest warriors. They attacked a human colony at the edge of former human space. The battle lasted 3 minutes. When it was over, the fleet was disabled but not destroyed. Every ship floated dead in space, power drained, weapons melted, but life support still functioning. The crews survived. They were meant to survive. They were meant to go home and tell everyone what they had seen. Human technology was not just better than Council technology. It was so far ahead that comparison was meaningless. They had brought their finest weapons against an enemy that had spent 50 years preparing for exactly this moment. They never had a chance. Word spread quickly. Species that had been considering resistance quietly abandoned their plans. Military leaders who had been promising victory suddenly retired. Politicians who had been calling for war suddenly discovered their love of peace and negotiation. Humanity had not just returned. Humanity had become something new, something terrifying, something that could have destroyed them all but had chosen a different path. They were making the galaxy suffer instead, and they were doing it with patience, precision, and cold efficiency. In the council chamber on Nexus Prime, the remaining representatives gathered. Some seats were empty now, their occupants too scared or too ashamed to attend. Those who remained looked at each other with haunted eyes. They had created this. Their arrogance, their indifference, their casual cruelty toward a species that had only wanted friendship. They had taken humanity's trust and thrown it away like garbage. And now they were paying the price. A message arrived, simple, direct. The Supreme Commander will address the Council tomorrow. Attendance is not optional. They would face again the woman they had dismissed, the ambassador they had ignored, the survivor who had promised them that they would regret their choice. None of them slept that night. The council chamber had never been so quiet. Every seat was filled, every representative present. They had been told attendance was not optional, and after everything that had happened, no one dared to disobey. The great doors opened and walked in alone. She moved slowly, her body kept alive by machines that hummed softly beneath her skin. She was 127 years old now, the last survivor of the original diplomatic team that had come to this chamber begging for help. Everyone else from those days was dead. Only remained, carried forward by will and technology, and a promise she had made to 17 billion ghosts. She walked to the center of the circle and stood in exactly the same spot where she had stood 50 years ago. The same spot where she had pleaded for mercy and received only silence. For a long moment, she simply looked at the representatives. The High Speaker, his shadowy form trembling slightly. The crystalline hegemony delegate, her glass body dim with shame. The methane lords breathing through filters that humanity had provided. Their once proud species now broken and poor. All of them looking at the old human woman with fear in their eyes. "I remember standing here," said softly. "I remember showing you images of children being eaten alive. I remember the sound of your laughter when I asked for help. No one spoke, no one could. You thought we were nothing, young, weak, forgettable. You calculated that our deaths would cost you less than our lives would gain you. It was simple mathematics to you, simple politics." She held up a data chip. "These are our terms. They are not negotiable. You will accept them, or we will continue what we have started until there is nothing left of your civilizations to accept anything." The High Speaker found his voice, though it was weak and shaking. "What do you want from us? Credits? Territory? Name your price and let us be done with this." Smiled, and it was the same cold smile she had worn when she left this chamber half a century ago. "We want justice." She activated the data chip, and words appeared on every screen in the chamber. The terms of humanity's return. First, full reparations for every human death during the massacre. The amount was calculated precisely, based on council standards for valuing life. It came to a number so large that several species would need centuries to pay their share. Second, complete restructuring of the Mutual Defense Compact. Any species that failed to respond to a legitimate call for help would face immediate expulsion from the Council and economic sanctions from all other members. No exceptions, no abstentions, no clever political games. Third, permanent human oversight of all military deployments in Council space. Humanity would have observers on every fleet, in every command center, with the authority to report violations directly to the new enforcement body. Fourth, a formal acknowledgement of what had happened, to be broadcast across the entire galaxy and preserved in the historical records of every species forever. The crystalline hegemony delegate read the text of the acknowledgement aloud, her voice like breaking ice. The Galactic Council abandoned humanity in its hour of greatest need. We chose our own comfort over the lives of 17 billion innocent beings. This was wrong. This was a betrayal of everything the Council claims to stand for. We failed, and we will carry that shame forever. The chamber was silent when she finished. "You cannot be serious," the representative whispered. "This would end our independence. This would make you the masters of the galaxy." Turn to face him. Yes, it would. "That is not justice, that is tyranny." "Is it?" His voice was still soft, but there was steel beneath it. "We are not asking you to die. We are not asking you to watch your children be eaten while the galaxy looks away. We are asking you to accept consequences for your actions. If that feels like tyranny to you, perhaps you should consider what your actions felt like to us." The High Speaker rippled with frustration. "What gives you the right to judge us? You were a young species, you made mistakes, you trusted too easily, that is not our fault." Walked toward him, her silver arm catching the light. She stopped close enough to touch his shifting form. "You are correct," she said. "We did trust too easily. We believed that civilized beings would act with honor. We believed that treaties meant something. We believed that when someone promises to help you, they will help you." She leaned closer. "You taught us that we were wrong, and now you want to know what gives us the right to judge you." She gestured around the chamber with her flesh and blood hand. "Power, that is what gives us the right, the same thing that gave you the right to let us die, the only thing this galaxy has ever truly respected." She stepped back. "The difference is what we choose to do with that power. You used yours to abandon innocence. We are using ours to ensure that no one is ever abandoned again." "Is this what you wanted?" the High Speaker asked bitterly. "To become what you hated, to become tyrants?" Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was tired, older than her years. "No, what I wanted was for my daughter to grow up on New Shanghai. She was 7 years old. She liked to collect rocks and dream about being an astronaut. They ate her in front of me while I could do nothing but watch." The chamber was utterly silent. "What I wanted was for 17 billion people to live their lives in peace. What I wanted was for our allies to be allies, for our friends to be friends, for trust to mean something." She looked around at the representatives, and for the first time there was something like sadness in her eyes. "But you killed those humans, the ones who believed in you, who trusted you, who wanted nothing more than to be part of your community. You killed them with your silence." She straightened her old shoulders. "The humans who stand before you now are what grew back from the ashes. We are what you created. We are the children of your betrayal, raised on stories of your cruelty, trained in the arts of power because you taught us that nothing else matters." She began walking toward the door. "Accept our terms, broadcast the acknowledgement, pay the reparations, allow our oversight. Do this and we will let you rebuild, we will even help you eventually. We remember how to be kind. We simply choose not to be kind to those who showed us none." She paused at the doorway, looking back one final time. We would have been your greatest friends. We would have shared everything, fought beside you against any threat, lifted the whole galaxy together. That was who we were before you killed us. Now you will spend the rest of your civilization's existence wondering what might have been, what you threw away, what you created in its place." The doors began to close. "We will never forget," said, "and neither will you." The doors sealed shut with a sound like a tomb closing. The Galactic Council sat in frozen silence, finally understanding the full weight of what they had done. They had betrayed a friend and created an enemy. They had dismissed a partner and awakened a power. They had laughed at mercy and received none in return. One by one, they signaled their acceptance of humanity's terms. They had no other choice. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, 17 billion ghosts finally rested. Their names had been remembered. Their deaths had been answered. Humanity had kept its promise.